Hello and welcome to this Access Sunday video. We will begin with a reading from our scripture, Psalm 19.
Psalm 19. This is from the New Revised Standard Version, Updated Edition. To the leader, a psalm of David. The heavens are telling the glory of God, and the firmament proclaims God's handiwork. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night declares knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words. Their voice is not heard. Yet their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In the heavens, God has set a tent for the sun, which comes out like a bridegroom from God's wedding canopy, and runs like a strong man runs its course with joy. Its rising is from the end of the heavens, and its circuit to the end of them, and nothing is hid from its heat. The law of the Lord is perfect, reviving the soul. The decrees of the Lord are sure, making wise the simple. The precepts of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is clear, enlightening the eyes. The fear of the Lord is pure, enduring forever. The ordinances of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. More to be desired are they than gold, even much fine gold. Sweeter also than honey and drippings of the honeycomb. Moreover, by them is your servant warned, and keeping them there is great reward. But who can detect one's own errors? Clear me from hidden faults. Keep back your servant also from the insolent. Do not let them have dominion over me. Then I shall be blameless and innocent of great transgression. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer.
Thank you, Kim. Well, welcome everyone. So for this Access Sunday, we would like to offer some reflections on this text, Psalm 19. My name is Becca Marin Anderson. I am a member of the UCC Disabilities Ministries Board and serve on the Disability Theology Subcommittee. I am disabled and also have a cat here with me as part of our discussion. I'm legally blind and also queer, and those pieces of me relate to how I approach all of Scripture, including how I relate to this text. And I have some other wonderful theologians here with me that I would love to invite to introduce themselves. Hannah, would you like to start?
Sure. My name is Hannah Sachs. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm also a member of the Disability Ministry Board. I am a pastor of, I am technically the Minister of Faith Formation at Rock Spring UCC in Arlington, Virginia. And I also identify as disabled and queer. And like Becca, those are not only important parts of my identity, they're important parts of my theological approach. And I'm happy to be with you all today.
Thank you, Hannah. And we also have Steph with us today. Steph, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Greetings from Michigan. I am a member in discernment, and I identify as disabled, and that informs my life and theology.
Thank you. And Kim, who read our scripture today, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Kim Williams, she, her pronouns, and I am one of the new co-chairs of UCC Disabilities Ministries, and I'm also an authorized lay minister at Grace Community Church in North Fork, California. I also identify as disabled and queer, and I have all of those fun, invisible identities within those two umbrellas. So that's what I bring into the discussion today.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for joining me. So today we are talking about Psalm 19 and how this might be preached or read through a disability lens. And one interesting line from that vantage point is in verses 3 and 4. There is no speech, nor are there words. Their voice is not heard, yet their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the ends of the world. So I'm wondering, for all of you, how do you understand these verses? And Steph, I'm wondering if you'd like to start us off?
Sure. Yeah. When I consider this, I think about, I've been using the word multisensory when I think about the experience of God, because if I consider, and I'm just referencing this here, there are no words, their voice is not heard. When I think about God being multisensory, everyone has their own experience of God, regardless of what their ability and disabilities are, and their way of relating to the world. And so that feels much more, the word would be expansive and wide of a way to understand God and the way that God communicates with God's creation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really feeling that, Steph. I'm thinking a lot at the moment about the ways that speech and language gets kind of put on a pedestal by a lot of societies, and the ways that, you know, if you don't use words correctly, or, you know, quote unquote correctly, or if you don't use them at all, your intelligence or even your humanity is in question. And yet there are so many ways to communicate things. You know, I'm thinking right now, my cat has been interrupting our recording already. She doesn't use any words, but she communicates what she wants very clearly. And, you know, and I think about that in this text of, you know, the heavens, the whole of creation, communicating things and having a speech-like communication that doesn't actually use words.
And one of the lines that strikes me is the juxtaposition between the voice is not heard, and yet their voice goes out through all the earth.
Yeah.
And I find that really interesting, because I think so often, especially within the disability community, there are stories and there are voices that are not heard, whether that's because the communication is literally occurring in a way that's not considered normative, or simply because people are not open to hearing perspectives that are challenging to them. But that is still going out. That voice is still going out. And in the same way, creation is declaring God's glory. And it's up to us whether or not we're going to notice that and take in that multisensory expression of glory. But it's going out regardless.
Yeah, I love that juxtaposition, that going out does not mean that everything will be heard, but not being heard doesn't mean it's not present.
Yeah, and it's not just going out to like your people or my people, our own individual networks. Here it's going out to the end of the world. It's got this wide reach. So it makes me think of the idea that the ways that we participate, the ways that we are able to show up, have that ripple effect. So even, you know, so the heavens, their voice is not heard, but their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. It's this idea that, you know, what we're doing in our own small spaces has this effect that still goes out and is creating this much larger movement.
Yeah, that reminds me of the ways in which disability community can often be quote unquote small scale, right? You know, it's a few disabled friends coming together to you know, help each other get groceries and, you know, help each other get into accessible spaces and you know, make the difficult phone calls and logistics together. And like, you know, you could look at that and go like, that's staying right where it is. You know, that's not going out and changing the world, but that those ripple effects really do affect things.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So another interesting part of this text that we've kind of touched on a little bit here is it's kind of describing the whole of the cosmos, telling the glories of God, right? You know, we start with the heavens are telling, and then you know, we go into all of these images and metaphors for what God is like and what God's communications are like. And I'm wondering how you all see this relating to this ability, this way in which divine communication is kind of on a cosmic scale.
Well,
It makes me. Oh, go ahead, Hannah.
Oh, sorry, Steph. I was just going to say that I think that one element of it that is resonant for me is that I don't always think about every single element of creation proclaiming God's glory. Like I walk past a million parts of creation on a daily basis that I don't notice, or if I do notice them, I don't maybe think about their further implications or really let it impact me. And so for me, just the global and nature of this proclamation also impacts how I see other people and also parts of myself. Like, do I really look at every other person or every part of every person, every part of my own body, of my own self, of my own mind, and see that as a proclamation of God's glory? Maybe not. And so for me, it's also just a call to, I like the word that was used before, just a more expansive recognition of the ways in which God's presence is made manifest.
Absolutely.
And I was thinking about the idea of still speaking, and in two ways. So still speaking, meaning quietly or sensory speaking, sensory communicating, and then still speaking, continuing to speak God, right? From the beginning of time, God's communicated, and until the end of time, whenever that is, God will communicate. And also with eco-theology being a new branch, at least that I was exposed to in my last semester of seminary, when I hear about even the rocks would sing to God and glorify God, that's another way to engage with God's creation and the cosmos.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think all of that together, you know, really make it feel very necessary to think about how disabled body minds are proclaiming the glory of God. You know, that like if we are talking about heavens and rocks and things, you know, like we're saying like this is that every part of creation proclaims the glory of God. We can't then turn around and say, but only some humans, only some kinds of bodies and minds. You know, we're saying this text is calling us to, as Hannah said, a much more expansive understanding of proclamation.
And you know, and in that I am thinking of as a neurospicy person myself, I'm thinking about the lines. So there's, you know, the law of the Lord is perfect, reviving the soul. And then there's all these things about the precepts of the Lord are right, the decrees of the Lord are sure. And there's examples in there. And I think that the ways that we read them sometimes create some division between that, like perfection and wonder of all of creation and the glory of all of creation. Because when I see making wise the simple as a person who thinks and does things very differently, thanks to my brain, I don't think that that's like a boom, you know, magic wand, we have made wise, like we've changed somebody. I think that it's like it's this uncovering of how wise different brains are, how different minds think. And the same thing, it says the commandment of the Lord is clear, enlightening the eyes. And I love that because it's not a, magic wand healing thing. It is like an enlightening. So it's not a, so often in scripture, we're confronted with healing and whenever we have any metaphors that have to do with body parts, right? And this one is an enlightening. It's a, it doesn't, it's clear. There's clarity there. There's not any need for anything to be different. I don't know. I just, I appreciate this one, because the way that we can read it through a disabled lens is just, God is, God has created us and made us wise and made us enlightened. And yeah.
Something that I hear in what you're saying, Kim, and also in just this group's conversation as a whole, is that one thing this passage is not is a call to normativity. Like, I think it's actually in the variety and diversity of creation that we find God's glory. It's not like, oh, only in the most perfectly straight, upright trees is God's glory displayed, or only in like the flowers with no lost petals, or, and in the same way that creation is beautiful in its diversity. I think sometimes, like you were saying, Becca, we do this weird switch on our brains where somehow that doesn't apply to humans. But I think that this text is a really beautiful reminder that normativity is never the Christian calling.
Yes.
That resonates with me as well. I was thinking about the medical model of disability and how sometimes, the notion of healing, and I was thinking about a notion of management and symptom management and accommodations and the kinds of things that are important to my mind body, that are very important to managing my mind body, to give me the best opportunities to be who God calls me to be, which is very different than, get up and walk or get up and do this or that. It's giving me the best opportunity to be my spiritual whole. I've been calling things holy, so it'd be WHOLLY, and then holy, HOLY, holy. So fully who we are in God. And to me, management rather than healing is what the medical model of disability is about.
Yeah, totally. And like, I think one thing that I'm thinking about in this relation to this conversation and reading the text, is there's, oh, now my brain has fully lost the thought that I just had. That's unfortunate. But yeah, I love that sense of being holy staff, of being fully ourselves and fully in God, as we're doing that. Are there other thoughts that folks have on this text?
Well, one thing that I'm always interested in, I come from an ethnically Jewish family, and I've had a lot of exposure just to more traditionally Jewish interpretations of texts, and I've loved studying Hebrew and things like that. And so I'm very fascinated by the idea of glory as being a word kavod that's also related to like weightiness. It's also related to like giving honor or praise to someone. In Hebrew, all these words are so complicatedly related. But I'm interested specifically in the implication of its weightiness because it feels so tangible. It feels so physical. And sometimes in my experience of Christianity, it can become really ethereal and really abstract. And I think that does a disservice to disability theology and disabled people, because when it becomes overly spiritualized, there's kind of this sort of Gnosticism happening where our spirits are held up as the true part of us and our bodies are left behind. But in this text, I feel like we get a reminder that God's glory, God's presence is something experiential. It's something physical, and it's something that we can encounter with our real bodies in the here and now. And the weightiness is almost like gravity. It pulls us into it. And so I just find that image to be really helpful.
Oh, I love that so much, Hannah. And the other thing that I'm thinking about that feels kind of like a contrast to how in Christian circles we often think of things is how much joy is in this text, particularly in relation to what in this text is termed the commandments of God. I think a lot of the time we think about following God as something arduous and difficult and painful, and I think like doing what we are called to do as Christians is not always easy and is not always joyful, but remembering that it really can be, and that it doesn't, things don't have to hurt in order to be good. And that feels like a very disability resonant reminder to me that like I think so often disabled folks get put into positions where we are being asked to do things that really hurt and really are not good for our body minds, because that's just the way that it's supposed to be done. Mm-hmm. And a reminder that proclaiming the glory of God, following in the way of God, doesn't have to hurt like that.
Mm-hmm.
Becca, when you share that, it brings to mind for me, I think oftentimes within the community of disabled body minds, there's often so much creativity with what folks bring to how we do things, how we experience them, or how we get a particular task completed, or just approach particular questions that maybe is similar and different than people who are of a different experience, because we, at least I'll share from my experience, I'm in my 40s, and so accommodations and laws in our country, let alone Michigan and other spaces where I've lived, have changed. And so ways that we've had access in my life has changed and expanded. And so, I'm thinking of times when I was younger and maybe there wasn't a lift and I was climbing up, stairs of a bus, or, doing some other thing to do it, but getting it done. Mm-hmm. And so I just think of the great creativity that I see within our very diverse community of folks.
Yeah. Our creativity allows us to find those ways to create more access and to do things differently. Absolutely. Well, friends, I think we could continue this conversation for hours and hours if we wanted to. But any last words before we wrap up today?
I just wanted to lift up the line that kind of comes in the end of this reading. That's but who can detect one's own errors? I think that that's a really good and important one, especially when we're talking about disability, because I know that it's an uncomfortable topic for a lot of folks to talk about. People don't know how to approach, do I say this? Do I not say this? What's the correct terminology? How do I, and I think that just that lifting up who can detect one's own errors, clear me from hidden faults in this particular psalm is really important, because we don't know until we know, right? Like and we only figure out what we are saying and doing that is maybe out of date, or is a term that we didn't know is derogatory, or things like that. We don't know that until we say it on accident and somebody calls us in and says, hey, maybe we don't say that. Maybe we don't do that. And it's such an important part to growing and learning and embracing all of this beautiful glory of creation, is to, talk about it and talk to people and learn what we have maybe gotten wrong in the past, and, go forward from there. So I just wanted to lift that up.
And relatedly, I think in many churches I've been in, actually, that final verse of this passage, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Those are words that are often said prior to a sermon and a prayer. And I think it's so interesting that that is where this declaration of glory in creation leads us, is to kind of this experience of transformation. And I want to be changed. I want to be molded in a way that is good. And I just think that to me is another powerful kind of journey that this text takes us on, is that an experience with God's glory in creation, both the natural world and in humans, disabled humans, leads to transformation.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, friends, so much for this discussion. Thank you for this time together. And may our contemplation of this text and our conversation together lead to transformation for us on the Zoom call and for all who continue the conversation. Have a happy Access Sunday, everyone. Thank you.